Here's something nobody expected. The Atlanta Hawks traded away their franchise scorer, and instead of falling apart, they got better and a whole lot more flexible. So what does their cap sheet actually look like heading into free agency, and how much room do they really have to build? Let me walk you through it. Here's the plan. First, how the roster and the books actually look now after the big trade. Then the real flexibility, the tools they have to add players. And then the one constraint that shapes everything they can do this summer. The roster facts are verified. The exact cap dollars are projections because the final sheet isn't public yet. Let's start with where they stand. This is Game is Culture. Quick thing before we dig in, if you like cap breakdowns that show the real math instead of just guessing, subscribe. It's free and it helps a ton. Now, where Atlanta stands. Where they stand now. Start with the headline. Atlanta moved on from Trae Young, the max contract that defined their cap sheet for years. And the team that was left didn't crater. They went 46-36, made the playoffs as the 6th seed, and pushed the eventual champion Knicks before losing in round 1. This is not a rebuild. It's a balanced young playoff team that just freed itself from its biggest commitment. And the new face of the franchise is Jalen Johnson. He led the team in points, rebounds, and assists, almost 28 and 5 a night, a do-everything forward in his prime years. Crucially, he's on an ascending team-friendly deal, not a max. So the most important player on the roster is also one of the best values on it. That is the foundation everything else gets built on. And here's the part the old narrative gets wrong. For years, Atlanta was a bottom 10 defense. Not anymore. This group finished 9th in defensive rating while shooting the 5th best three-point percentage in the entire league. A top 10 defense and elite shooting around a young, cheap star. That's a genuinely solid core, and it changes what kind of free agency they should run. The flexibility. So how much room is there? With Trae's max off the books and Johnson on value money, Atlanta projects to have meaningful flexibility. My estimate is somewhere in the range of real cap space plus the full mid-level exception worth around $14.5 million. For a team that just made the playoffs, that is rare. Most playoff teams are capped out. Atlanta gets to add talent and keep its young core. And to see how rare this is, compare Atlanta to the rest of the playoff field. Most teams that win 40-plus games are buried in the luxury tax with essentially zero room to add. Their books are completely full. Atlanta is the outlier, a playoff team sitting on real spending power. In a league where flexibility is the single most valuable currency, being a winning team that can still write checks is an edge almost nobody else has this summer. And look at what the flexibility is wrapped around. This isn't an aging, expensive roster. It's a young one. Jalen Johnson is in his prime years on a value deal, and the supporting core is full of cheap, developing players on rookie and early contracts. That matters because cheap youth is what keeps you under the aprons even after you add a salary. Atlanta can improve the team without triggering the penalties that strangle other contenders. And it's not just cash, it's assets. Atlanta still controls tradable draft capital and a stable of young players on cheap deals. That combination, cap space plus picks plus youth, is exactly what lets a team be aggressive, either by signing a free agent outright or by absorbing salary in a trade to turn cap room into a better player. Flexibility is only valuable if you use it. Atlanta finally has it to use. The one constraint. But here's the catch that shapes everything. The new collective bargaining rules punish teams that spend into the aprons around $209 and $222 million. Atlanta is nowhere near that, which is the good news. The constraint isn't money, it's fit. They have room for basically one major addition before the math tightens. So they can't fix everything. They have to spend that flexibility on the right thing. Quick halftime note, if you want every team's cap situation broken down like this all summer, subscribe, it's free. Now, what that flexibility is actually worth. So weigh the two ways Atlanta can use this summer. They can stay flexible, keep the picks, run it back with the young core and one cheap addition. Or they can convert it, packaging space and picks to go get a established second star next to Johnson. One path protects the future, the other tries to win sooner. Both are open, which is a luxury most playoff teams don't have. And the timing matters. Johnson is good now and cheap now, but value windows close. His next contract will cost far more. So the smart read is that Atlanta's flexibility is most valuable this summer, while their best player is still a bargain. Sitting on the room and doing nothing would be the one real mistake. The clock on cheap flexibility is already running. And the East context makes the timing perfect. The conference just watched the Knicks win a title with a cluster of teams right behind them. There's a real opening in the next tier for a young, two-way team to climb, and most of Atlanta's competition for those seeds is capped out and stuck. Atlanta is the one team in that group that can actually add a difference maker this summer. That's how you jump the line. The verdict. So here's the bottom line on Atlanta's cap situation. They are one of the rare teams that is both a playoff team and genuinely flexible, with room, the full mid-level, picks, and a cheap young star to build on. The grade on their flexibility is high. The only thing that could waste it is indecision. They have the tools. The summer is about aiming them well. And here's the quiet risk of doing nothing. Flexibility is only an asset until it expires. If Atlanta sits on the room and runs it back unchanged, they don't just stay still. They burn a year of Jalen Johnson on a bargain contract, and they let rivals who get healthy or get lucky pass them. Cap space that never gets used isn't patience, it's a wasted advantage. The cost of inaction here is real. Now, where could I be wrong? The exact cap figures depend on a few re-signings that aren't final, so treat the dollar amounts as estimates, not gospel. And flexibility can vanish fast if they overpay to keep a role player, but the shape of it is clear. Atlanta walked into this summer with options, which is more than most playoff teams can say. So that's Atlanta's cap reality, a flexible young playoff team with one big swing to take. The real question is what they do with it, and that's the next video, their realistic free agent targets. What would you do with Atlanta's room? Tell me below, and we are so close to 1,000 subs, so subscribe to stay up to date.